One of the best parts of my job is that I get to travel a lot. Most people hear that and think it sounds exciting, and honestly, sometimes it is. But after a while, it starts to feel routine. Same airports, same hotels, same checkout times. You stop noticing the places you're in and just focus on getting the work done. But every now and then, work sends me somewhere that breaks that routine completely. Somewhere that doesn't feel like the rest of the world even exists. A few years ago, that place was the Adirondacks. If you're not familiar with it, the Adirondacks is a vast, remote mountain region in upstate New York. And when I say remote, I mean it. We're talking about millions of acres of wilderness, forests that seem to go on forever, and towns so small you could drive through them without realizing you were ever there. I was sent there for work, and at first, it was just another assignment. But the moment I arrived and saw the landscape, something shifted. It was fall, and the entire region had transformed into something I honestly wasn't prepared for. Every tree was on fire with colored deep reds, burnt oranges, bright golds. The mountains in the background, the crisp air, the silence. It was the kind of place that makes you stop and just stare for a moment, because it doesn't look real. It looks like someone painted it. Now, normally when I travel for work, I stay in a hotel. It's just easier. You check in, you do your work, you check out. Simple. But this time, I didn't want simple. Maybe it was the scenery, maybe it was just the mood I was in, but I wanted to actually experience being out there. I wanted to wake up in the middle of those woods and just breathe. So I went on Airbnb and started looking for something different, and I found it. A cabin, deep in the woods, away from everything. The listing had photos of this beautiful wooden structure surrounded by massive trees on all sides. No neighbors in sight, no roads visible. Just the cabin and the forest. The reviews were good, the price was reasonable, and something about it just felt right. So I booked it. When I arrived and pulled up to the cabin for the first time, my first thought was that it looked even better in person than it did in the photos. The wood had that old, natural look to it. There was a deck out front with a couple of chairs. The trees around it were so tall, they blocked most of the sky. And the silence, I remember stepping out of my car and just standing there for a second, because I couldn't hear anything. No cars, no people, no city noise, just wind moving slowly through the trees. It felt like exactly what I needed. I brought my bags inside, got settled, and spent the rest of the afternoon just relaxing. That evening, I sat out on the deck with a drink and watched the light fade through the trees. The forest gets dark early in the fall, and by the time the sun went down, the woods around the cabin were completely black. But it didn't feel threatening. It felt peaceful. Quiet in a way that's hard to find anywhere else. I went to bed that night feeling good about my decision, but the next morning, something felt different. I woke up early and decided to go for a jog on one of the nearby trails. The air was cold and sharp, the kind of cold that wakes you up immediately. At first, everything felt great. The trail wound through the trees, the light was coming through the leaves in that golden fall way, and I was just focused on running. But after maybe 20 minutes or so, I started to feel something. It's hard to describe exactly. It wasn't fear, not at first. It was more like awareness, like something in the back of my mind was telling me to pay attention. That feeling you get when you're being watched, even though you turn around and there's nothing there. I kept running. I told myself it was just the isolation getting to me. Being alone in the woods with no one around your brain starts playing games with you. That's normal. That's just how it works. But the feeling didn't go away. It followed me the entire rest of the run, all the way back to the cabin. And even when I was back inside, showered, coffee in hand, sitting at the kitchen table, it was still there, quiet, sitting in the back of my mind, like something was just slightly off, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I spent most of that day inside. I told myself I was just tired, that I needed rest. I tried to read, tried to work a little, tried to just relax. But I kept noticing things, small things. A creak from somewhere in the cabin that didn't sound like the house settling. A sound outside that stopped the moment I looked up. Nothing I could point to and say, that's it. That's the problem. Just small, quiet things that kept pulling at my attention, and I kept ignoring them. That evening, I drove into town to meet up with some coworkers for dinner. It was good to be around people again. We ate, we talked, we laughed, and for a couple of hours, that feeling faded completely, but then dinner ended, and I had to drive back. The drive back to the cabin at night was a completely different experience than arriving in the daylight. The road got narrower the deeper into the forest I went. the trees on both sides pressed in closer. My headlights only reached so far, and beyond that was just darkness. Complete, total darkness. By the time I pulled up to the cabin, I had talked myself into being fine. I parked, grabbed my things, and walked up to the front door. Everything looked exactly as I had left it, too exactly. I don't know how to explain that feeling. It was like standing in a room and knowing someone has been in it, even though nothing is visibly out of place. Something just felt off. I went inside, locked the door behind me, checked it twice, and told myself I was being ridiculous. I was tired. That was all. I went upstairs, got into bed, and closed my eyes. But sleep didn't come. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that just wouldn't come. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. And I know that sounds strange, because quiet is exactly what I had wanted when I booked this place. But there's a difference between peaceful quiet and the kind of quiet that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. This was the second kind. Every few minutes, I'd hear something. A creak from somewhere downstairs. A sound from outside that I couldn't identify. Wind against the windows. Or at least, that's what I told myself it was. I picked up my phone and started watching videos. Just something to fill the silence. Something to give my brain something else to focus on. And it worked for a while. An hour passed, then another. The clock on my phone said it was past midnight. And then I heard something that didn't belong. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a sound from downstairs that was different from the other sounds. More deliberate. Like something or someone shifting their weight on a wooden floor. I sat up immediately. I stayed completely still and just listened. Silence. I told myself it was nothing. Old cabins make sounds. Wood expands and contracts. It's completely normal. I had read that 100 times about old houses. I lay back down, and then I heard it again. This time, there was no convincing myself it was the house. It was too specific, too careful. The kind of sound that has a pattern to it, a rhythm, like something moving slowly and deliberately across a floor. My heart rate went from 0 to everything in about 2 seconds. I sat up again, and this time, I didn't lie back down. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, not moving, just listening with everything I had. My eyes were adjusted to the darkness by now, and I could see the shape of the room around me, the door, the window, the chair in the corner. Everything in my room looked normal, but the sounds were coming from downstairs. I want to be honest about what I was feeling in that moment, because I think a lot of people imagine they would react a certain way in a situation like this. They think they would immediately call the police, or grab something and go confront whatever was down there. But the reality is that your brain doesn't work like that. Your brain starts negotiating. It starts looking for every possible explanation that isn't the scary one. Maybe I left a window open and the wind is moving something around. Maybe there's an animal that got inside somehow. Maybe the heating system makes sounds I haven't heard before. I went through all of it, but I couldn't stay in that room forever. I got up slowly, as quietly as I possibly could. The floor under my feet made a soft sound, and I stopped immediately, waiting to see if anything changed downstairs. Nothing. I moved toward the bedroom door and opened it slowly. The hallway outside was completely dark. I could see the top of the staircase from where I was standing, and beyond that, nothing. Just darkness going down. I stood there for a moment listening, and then I heard it again, definitely Definitely the kitchen area. A soft, careful movement on the wooden floorboards. Something was in the house. I reached back into my room and grabbed the first thing my hand found. A heavy wooden walking stick that had been leaning against the wall near the door. I don't even know why it was there. Maybe a previous guest left it. Maybe it came with the cabin. But in that moment, I was grateful for it. I started moving down the stairs. Every step felt like it took forever. I was trying to move quietly, trying not to announce myself, but also trying to see into the darkness below before whatever was down there could see me. The staircase opened up into the living room, and from there I could see the edge of the kitchen to the left. The house was completely dark except for a thin strip of moonlight coming through the living room window. It lit up a narrow section of the floor, but left everything else in shadow. I reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. I listened. Nothing now. Complete silence. And then I looked toward the kitchen, and I saw it. A shape, standing in the darkness of the kitchen, still, not moving. My brain did exactly what I described earlier. It started trying to explain it away. It's a coat hanging on something. It's a shadow from outside. It's your eyes playing tricks on you in the dark. But then the shape moved, just slightly, just enough. and every explanation I had built up in my mind collapsed completely. There was someone in the kitchen. I don't remember making a conscious decision to speak. It just happened. My voice came out of me, low and controlled in a way that didn't match what I was feeling inside. I asked who was there. The figure didn't answer. It just stood there, completely still again, like it hadn't moved at all. Like maybe I had imagined it. I asked again, louder this time. Nothing, and then, slowly, the figure turned toward me, and I saw him. A man, tall, broad shoulders, messy hair, a beard. His face was barely visible in the low light, but there was enough moonlight coming through the window that I could see he was real. Not a shadow, not my imagination, a real person, standing in the kitchen of my cabin. In the middle of the night. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Neither of us moved. It was like both of us were trying to figure out what the other person was going to do next. I was holding the walking stick at my side, gripping it so hard my knuckles were hurting. He was just standing there, watching me, and then something changed in the way he was standing. I don't know how to explain it exactly. His posture shifted, his shoulders dropped slightly, and something in my gut told me, before my brain even caught up, that whatever was about to happen next was not going to be good. He moved, not slowly, not cautiously. He lunged straight at me. Everything in my body fired at once. I didn't think. I didn't clap. My legs just moved. I turned and ran back toward the staircase, hitting the first step hard, and taking them two at a time. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps fast and heavy on the floor, then on the stairs behind me. He was right there. I reached my bedroom door and threw myself inside, spinning around and slamming it shut. My hands were shaking so badly that getting the lock to engage felt like it took forever, but I managed it. I pressed my back against the door and stood there in the dark, trying to control my breathing. For a second, there was silence. Just me and my own heartbeat, and then the door shook. A heavy, violent hit from the other side that rattled the entire frame. I braced myself against it instinctively. Another hit, harder this time. I stepped back and grabbed my phone off the nightstand. My fingers were trembling as I dialed emergency services. I could hear my own breathing loud in my ears as the line connected, and then I heard him speak, not shouting, not screaming, just his voice, calm and quiet, coming through the door like he had all the time in the world. "I know you're in there." I felt something drop in my chest when I heard that, because calm was worse than angry. Calm meant he wasn't panicking. Calm meant he had done this before, or at least that he wasn't afraid of what came next. Another hit on the door, then another. That wood around the lock was starting to give slightly, small cracks forming at the edges. I could see it even in the dark. I backed into the far corner of the room, phone pressed to my ear, eyes fixed on the door, waiting, and then I heard something I wasn't expecting. Sirens, faint at first. So faint I thought I was imagining them, but they got louder, fast. The hitting on the door stopped. There was a pause, total silence, like even he was listening. And then everything happened at once. A crash downstairs. Voices. Loud, commanding voices cutting through the house. "Police, get down." Down on the ground. The sound of a struggle. Something falling. More shouting. And then silence again. A knock on my door. Different this time. Calm. Controlled. "Sir, this is the police. You can come out now. You're safe." I stood in the corner for a few more seconds, just trying to process what had just happened. Then I slowly crossed the room and opened the door. I opened the door slowly and stepped out into the hallway. Two officers were standing there, both in uniform, both looking calm in a way that I absolutely was not. One of them looked at me and immediately said, "You're okay. He's in custody. It's over." I nodded, but my legs felt like they weren't completely working yet. I held onto the doorframe for a second and just breathed. We walked downstairs together, and that's when I saw him. The man from the kitchen. He was on the ground, hands cuffed behind his back, still struggling slightly against the officers holding him down. He was saying things under his breath, quiet and agitated, words that didn't fully make sense. And then one of the officers pulled him up to his feet, and I got a proper look at his face for the first time. He looked completely normal. That sounds like a strange thing to say, but it's the truth, and it's the part that stayed with me the longest. He didn't look like a monster. He didn't look dangerous. He looked like someone you'd pass in a grocery store without a second thought. Regular face, regular build, just a person, and somehow, that was the most unsettling part of the whole night. I stood there watching them take him out through the front door, and one of the officers came over and started asking me questions. How long had I been at the cabin? Had I seen anyone earlier that day? Had anything seemed off before that night? I answered everything, but honestly, I was running on autopilot. My brain was still somewhere back in that bedroom, pressed against the wall, listening to the door get hit over and over again. Later, after everything had settled down and the officers had finished taking my statement, I asked how they had gotten there so fast. They told me that a neighbor, and I used the word loosely, because the nearest house was almost a mile away, had seen an unfamiliar vehicle parked near the cabin earlier that evening and had called it in. The local department had been keeping an eye on it, and when the call came in from me, they were already close. I was lucky. I knew that I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the living room with every light in the cabin on until the sun came up, and the moment it was light outside, I packed my bags, put them in the car, and drove away without looking back. I never finished the work assignment from that location. I made some calls, explained what had happened, and arrangements were made. Nobody pushed back. But here's the thing, even after I left, even after I was back in a normal hotel, in a normal city with people and noise and traffic outside my window, I couldn't shake it. Not the fear exactly, more like the awareness, because that man in the kitchen wasn't a ghost. He wasn't some creature. He was a real person who had made a deliberate choice to be inside that cabin. And the cabin was supposed to be safe. I had chosen it because it was private, because it was isolated, because it felt like nothing bad could reach me out there. But that isolation worked both ways. And no neighbors to hear anything, no traffic to notice anything out of place, no one around for miles. The very things that made it feel safe were the exact same things that made it dangerous. And that thought, that simple, quiet thought, was what I couldn't put down after that night. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a bad experience. Move on. But sometimes life doesn't let you move on that easily. And a few months later, on what was supposed to be a simple family vacation, I found out exactly what I mean by that.